Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So, I just want to make this more like interactive because it's the end of the day and it's probably very tiring for everybody here. So, we'll try to make it more interactive. If you guys have any questions at all, just raise your hand. If you don't understand a concept, a word, obviously I'm in the field of mental health, so when I talk about something, it's easier for me to just say it, and I expect like people to understand it. So I've made that mistake before. So if there's anything that you feel like that I need to explain further, just raise your hand, okay? I will not mind at all. As he said, I'm from the Khalil Center. Khalil Center has our location, our main office in Lombard, and alhamdulillah, right now it's the largest provider of Muslim mental health in North America. So we'll talk a little bit about stress. Now, when we say stress is a very loaded term, right? So let me ask you guys, how would you define stress? Someone take a shot at it.
Worrying.
Okay, worrying.
Worries.
Okay.
Frustration.
Frustration. Okay, what else?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Okay. What's the difference between anxiety, frustration, and worrying? So let me tell you clinically, right? So anxiety is like a catch-all phrase. Okay, it's a catch-all term that people use to describe this feeling of like being overwhelmed. And the way anxiety manifests, and we'll talk about that in a second, is different than the way depression comes in. Okay, so depression has to do with sadness, sad mood, not having any interest, can't get out of bed, that kind of feeling. Anxiety is more like jittery, anxious, worried, a bit frustrated. Angry. That's where anxiety comes from. But why do Muslims, especially you guys now, because I mean most of you are from Palestine, I'm assuming, right? Background nearby. I'm from Kashmir, so kind of similar, I suppose, background. Why do you think people like us have more anxiety or more stress than someone who is white, American, born and raised here?
Because we feel like maybe we can't talk about the issues as openly as other people.
Okay, because we don't talk about issues. True. What else? Yes.
Maybe some of us could be afraid that whatever is happening over there can happen to us right now here.
Okay, so we're talking about trauma, right? Trauma can go through generations, intergenerational trauma. You hear stuff, you see stuff. Our parents are probably all traumatized, when they were, growing up. So that also passes on. Why else do you think we have more stress than the average white American kid? Yes.
Homeland is under attack.
Say that again?
Our homeland is under attack.
Okay. Homeland is under attack. Yes.
We have a second language to speak.
Okay, so you're getting a little bit close to what I'm trying to get at, right? What does that language have to do? Like, what is language when it relates to us? It's part of our what? Identity, right? So Muslim Americans have to deal a lot with identity issues. Okay, so I'm just gonna change my slide here. So what is identity? How do you identify your own self? If somebody asks you, who are you? How do you introduce you? Like if you had to write a two-liner on yourself, like the tagline on Instagram as your identity, what would you say on there?
Muslim American.
Muslim American, Palestinian, what else? Arab, right? What else?
Your age.
Your age also, of course, male, female, right? There's a lot of identities we deal with. So identity is first of all, it's a normal process. Identity crisis is a normal process that people go through. According to like psychology research, they say typically high school age, like 14 to 18, everybody goes through a process where they're trying to figure out who am I. This is why when you go to high school and like late middle school, you realize people have like their identities change, right? Sometimes they have like black hair, sometimes they get blonde hair. Like people just kind of, sometimes they're part of this group. One day they're dressed like this, the other day they're dressed like that. You see what I'm talking about? That's an identity struggle. They're trying to figure out who am I and how to identify myself. So that's a normal process that everybody goes through. So it's not like only Muslims or Palestini or Kashmiri or anybody else, like we have to go through it. Everybody goes through the identity development process. It happens around youth, and then for us it's multi-layered, right? So when I say multi-layered, what I mean is, for Muslims especially, we have a religious identity, right? We have a cultural identity, we have a gender identity, we have a personality identity. Everybody's got a different Some people have their gamer identity, like, the youth who are playing into games and whatnot. Sports identity. There's a collective identity, like, this is like our culture here, our group here does this, our group does this. Do you see what I mean? So there's a lot of different identities you have to struggle with, you have to navigate. That in itself is very stressful. Okay, so your primary source of stress, believe it or not, at the very deep level, is coming from just the idea that who am I? Okay? So that alone is like enough to cause someone who's not very strong, which most people, let's be honest, it's not easy sometimes. People go overwhelmed. That alone is enough to cause some kind of anxiety, some kind of depression to come in. This is why most high schoolers are stressed. Okay? Is everybody understanding what I'm saying so far? Okay. Again, if you have any questions, please ask. And then what we get are related issues, right? So we have people who go into clinical depression, people who go into clinical anxiety, and I'll tell you what the symptoms are for that. People who have negative coping, like they start smoking or doing things that are just unhealthy for them, right? Maybe sleeping more, that's also negative coping. Fighting too much is negative coping. Being on social media is negative coping. I don't know if you guys know, but there's been studies done on social media and how social media causes more depression. Did you know that? Do you know Instagram causes more depression than Facebook does? Sounds weird, but they've done study on it. Why do you think social media causes depression or causes people to become sad? Social media portrays a fake presentation of what life is, right? That's what it's giving. Everything is great. I've seen people, I see people in my clinical practice, people say if they're married or those who are, coming in for depression, anxiety. And then because we have a small community, so I'll see their profile on social media. And I look at the social media, I'm like, wow, you cannot tell the problems that these people are having by the way they present themselves on social media. And we can't blame people, right? I mean, it's all about presentation. Yeah, what food you're eating. So you see all this great food. So that alone, just scrolling through that feed, looking at people being happy and oh my God, this person's so happy with their XYZ, whether it's their car or their house or their job or their spouse or whatever it is, that in itself causes stress. And what people do when they feel stressed, they go on social media, right? So that's the reason I was talking about this, is that's also negative coping, right? If you feel depressed, the last thing that you should do, the last thing that we should do is go back on social media, because that is a source of depression. I'll give you another similar example, right? A lot of people have difficulty sleeping at night. What do you do when you can't sleep at night? You go on your phone, right? Everybody does that, right? Let's be honest. That's the worst thing you can do for yourself, for your sleep, is to go back on your phone if you cannot sleep. It's counterintuitive. Does that make sense? So that's one way to cope negatively. And then people have addictions. They have chemical addictions and behavioral addictions. We'll talk about some of them in a little bit more detail. So my lecture is going to go it's going to be a bit scientific at times, but I'll try to break it down so that everybody can benefit from it. Most of you are probably future doctors or something anyway, so inshallah, it's a crash course for some of these concepts. Okay, depression. So depression is, again, the biggest sign of depression, the one sign that distinguishes depression from any other issue, is lack of interest in things that you previously found interesting, right? So let's say that you're a type of person who likes to play video games. Let's say you're the type of person who likes to go out with friends. Let's say you're the type of person who likes to do whatever that you like to do, whatever that you enjoy, okay? When you become depressed, you guys okay there? There's only enough chairs there. I mean, you're not going to fit there. It's musical chairs over here. What depression does is it takes that interest away from you. Okay, clinically they call that anhedonia. That before the things that you found interesting before, now they're not interesting. Now they're boring. Now you cannot get the same amount of pleasure out of them. Okay, so if anything, if you realize that for yourself or someone else, then man, this person used to be so much into this. Now they're not into anything. That's a very subtle sign of depression, but it's very unique to depression. Other signs: sadness, agitation, pessimism, crying, guilt, being overly critical, suicidal thoughts, feeling irritable, loss of energy. So depressed people will sometimes be very slow. They're they can't function as quickly as other people might. Anxiety manifests how? Physically. Okay, people who are anxious. Whenever you've been anxious, tell me one sign that tells you that you're anxious. Give me one sign that you know that tells you that you're anxious right now. Yes.
When you
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
we
fidgety,
said- Yeah. it was
right? That's called being fidgety. Yes.
Okay.
Sweaty palms or sweaty anything, right? That's anxiety. What else? Yes.
Like your heart starts beating and then you breathe fast. And
That's right. Faster heart rate, right? The dry throat. So I have some anxiety right now. That's why I'm drinking a lot of water. Because dryness in your throat is a sign of anxiety.
Shaky.
Having faster heartbeat, shakiness, nervousness, all the signs that you see here, these are signs of anxiety. So anxiety is more physical, right? So you can actually see it. You ideally should, and we'll do an exercise later, but you should be able to identify for yourself what is my sign of anxiety. Like for me, I can tell I get a little fidgety, my throat dries up a little bit. Sometimes I start pricking in my skin, like these muscles back here tense up. Okay, that's a sign of anxiety. So you should know. Oh my God, I'm anxious right now. Why am I anxious right now? We'll figure that out. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, this is what's happening outside, but what happens inside? So let's go to the brain. Okay, that's our brain. We won't go into detail. Just to kind of give you some idea, there's two different chemicals that are part of us that go up and down when there's anxiety in our brain, okay? So one, you don't need to memorize this, there's no quiz. One is called serotonin, the other one is called dopamine. You've heard the word dope, right?
Yeah.
Dope, that's where that comes from,
Dope
dopamine.
like makes you happy.
Okay, what's
It's like the
that?
happy thing.
You can say it for something fancy.
Oh, I didn't say it.
Okay. Dopamine goes up in your body whenever you feel pleasure. Whether it's pleasure coming from eating good food, whether it's pleasure coming from hanging out with good company, whatever form of pleasure that you have, that will cause a surge in dopamine in your brain. Okay, so people who shoot heroin, for example, they'll take a needle, inject heroin to themselves. It increases their dopamine really quickly, and they feel really good. Okay, some people believe it or not, some people get addicted to exercising, right? I wish I was one of those people, but yeah, people, they go out and they start running and they get this really like runner's high. Their dopamine level shoots up and they just want to run all day long. And these people are like healthy people, so they don't need to be running that much, but because they're addicted to running. So now serotonin, on the other hand, has to do with mood. Okay, so how many people have heard of like Prozac, Zoloft, medications for depression, right?
Yeah.
These are all medications that increase serotonin inside of your body. Okay, so people who are depressed, they have low serotonin. Now, the quick question, can depression and anxiety run in your family and can be genetic?
Yeah.
Yes, it definitely can. So if your parents or their parents or your uncles or cousins, if anybody has anxiety and depression that you know of, that's like gotten out of hand, it's possible you might have it too. So you want to keep an eye on it, okay? Does that make sense? You're laughing so much. Is it dopamine that's making you laugh? Hippocampus, right. You don't laugh now, but when you get to high school, you have to memorize this stuff, you're going to be crying. So then you can come see me for counseling, okay? All right, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. One thing I want to talk about addictions, okay? Why do addictions develop? Yes, question.
How can depression be genetic? I thought it was just about like how you felt, or it had something to do with your feelings.
Because it can be, let me explain it the way, there was a scholar in the 9th century called Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, okay? He's a very cool person that you should know about. He was like the first Muslim psychologist, okay? Shh, hey, come on guys. Okay, so Abu Zayd al-Balkhi said that depression can be two types. It can be endogenous or exogenous. It can be something that comes from within, something that comes from outside. So when you're talking about environment, like, okay, I failed an exam, or I did that, or my parents yelled at me, that's an exogenous way. That's an outside factor that leads to depression. But if you have a chemical imbalance inside of you that comes genetically, like some people are born with that, like ADHD runs in families, you know that, right? Like cancers run in families. So what happens is that there's a gene mutation that causes your body to secrete more or less of serotonin or norepinephrine. There's like a whole bunch of chemicals that can lead to depression or even anxiety, right? Some people have, believe it or not, my 4-year-old has anxiety. And I know it because he talks a lot, he stutters sometimes, and then like sometimes like he'll pick on his skin a lot. And so I know it's genetic because there's no reason for him to be anxious other than just that. So it can run in families. But two things I want to tell you about addictions. How do people get addicted to something? Okay, there's two concepts that you should know. Medically, they're called tolerance and dependence, but we're not going to go into the medical terminology. I want to give you the simple way of explaining what that is. Tolerance is when you begin to tolerate something and it's not as effective anymore. So for example, let's say that you have back pain, and somebody gives you 500 milligrams of Tylenol. Okay, they give you 500 milligrams, your pain gets better. Let's say the next day the same thing, they give you 500, pain gets better. You keep taking that 500, after like the 20th, 30th, or whatever time, depending on your body, that 500 won't be enough. You're gonna need what? You're gonna need 1,000. You might need 1,500. You might need 2,000, right? It's gonna keep going up. Why? Because your body learns to tolerate that. Now let me give you something behavioral, okay? So let's talk about something real, which happens to a lot of people, especially in your age, is pornography addiction, right? It does happen. That's exactly how it develops. You look at something, when you were young, when we were young, and I'm going to say we because there's a big age difference here. I'm 36, so I know some people here. Who's the youngest person in here? Everybody raise their hand.
13-year-olds are the youngest people.
13-year-olds are the youngest?
I got a 12-year-old.
12-year-old.
11.
I'm actually
11. Okay, 11-year-old. You're what?
10 and a half.
10 and a half. Okay, 10 and a half. So there's a 26-year age gap between you and me. So when we were young, we'd be watching like TV, and then two people would be holding their hands and be like, oh my God, this is like so embarrassing. We'd be so like, like turn red and shocked and just turn off the TV. Some people just throw stuff on the TV and it'll break. That's how it was, right? If two people were kissing on TV, like, oh my God, this is really like, our parents would kill us. Nowadays, I was kind of shocked to know that, but families are sitting and watching Game of Thrones together. That kind of gets me a little uneasy. You know what I mean? Like, that's a little bit, but what is that? That's tolerance, right? Because as time has passed, and as we've been exposed more to like things that are haram, it gets easier for us to just tolerate it. It's not a big deal. So what? Two people holding hands and kissing, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And that's how pornography addiction develops. Because people in the beginning will watch it for whatever, but then later on, it's like they like whatever they're watching wasn't affecting them anymore. Okay. The other concept is called dependence. Dependence is when your body begins to depend on something. Okay. So for example, Tylenol. If you took that Tylenol for like say 100 days straight for back pain, let's say you stop taking it, what's going to happen?
Your back goes hard.
It is not only that your back is going to hurt, it's going to hurt a lot more. In addictions, they call that withdrawal symptoms. You know what I'm talking about? So people who are addicted to drugs, when you take the drugs away, I used to work at an alcohol center, and alcohol is like the worst thing to withdraw from, right? You take alcohol away from their body, these people are about to die. They're shaking and they're like peeing on them, so it's like really, really bad. Like that's like the worst, and that can actually kill you. So what they do is they give you medications to kind of, make it easier for you to come off of that. After about 3-4 days, you're clean. So these two things can happen with everything. Now, same with like social media. We're addicted to social media, right? A lot of people are. Let's say somebody took your phone away. If I don't have my phone in my pocket here, I get uneasy. Like, oh my God, where's my phone? What if somebody calls me? What if I have to call somebody? You know what I mean? Like, it's just that anxiety. That's a withdrawal symptom. Does that make sense? But that's for a behavioral addiction, not a chemical addiction. Okay. All right, we're gonna skip over because you guys are like very hard to like keep your attention on. It's like maybe the end of the day or something, or maybe everybody here has ADHD. Okay, so we're gonna jump straight to what to do. Like, what should you do because of all this stress, anxiety, addictions, the things that we talked about? Okay, so we'll talk about something practical, and then I'll take open Q&A. So what do you do here? First thing I want you to do is I want you to stop thinking in what's called dialectics. Okay, so sometimes things that are opposite or seem opposite to you can both be true. So this picture is I like this picture because it explains, when I work with couples, husband and wife, and I'm sure if you ever work with your parents and they have a fight, it's the same concept. You sit the husband down and you say, hey, tell me what happened. He'll explain, oh, she did this and she did that and that. Like, wow, that sucks. That's really hard. Okay, wife, tell me what happened. Well, he's like this and he's this. Oh my God, that's really hard. Okay, so now who's the problem here? You see what I mean? Both of them have a perspective, but both of them are a problem, but both of them are also the victim here, right? So what this picture is that it looks like, I don't know if you can see in the back, but it's like a weird looking thing in the middle. If you shine the light from here, you see a square. If you're standing on this side, you'll see a square, right? But if you're standing on this side of the picture, you're going to see a circle. So if you had to bet, you'd be like, yeah, that's a circle if you're standing over here. Like, you see what? Oh, a cylinder?
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. But I'm talking about if you're standing purely on this side, right? You know, you've seen those like those illusions that they have where you like as you move closer to something, it changes. It's kind of like that. But the idea is that you can have an opinion, and the person next to you can have an opinion, and both of you can be right.
Weber's law.
What's that?
Weber's law.
Weber's law. Okay, sure. Thank you, philosophy. We have a philosophy guy here.
That's the guy that did it, bro.
But that concept alone is going to help you out a lot, because you know why? You're going to have a belief in your mind, right? I think that X, Y, Z happened, and this is making me upset and whatnot. Or someone else is going to say something to you, and you're going to get hurt, right? You have to understand there's always the other side of the story. That our belief, the way we see the world, is our own subjective belief based on how we were raised, based on our past experiences. It is not the ultimate truth. Does that make sense? Right? It is not like haqq, right? Haqq is whatever Allah and His Messenger ﷺ said. That's haqq for us. Other than that, everything is negotiable. So keep that in mind, that whenever you have a differing opinion, there is the other side of the story, and both of you can be correct. Any questions on that? Good? Okay. Now let's talk about emotional intelligence, which is my next slide here. Okay, what are emotions? Oh my God, you're not going to be able to read any of this, so I'll read it for you, right? So if you look into like the literature for emotions, you'll see that they talk about like there's the primary emotions and there's secondary, and there's like all these other emotions, right? So primary emotions can be sadness, fear, anger, joy, disgust, surprise. Okay, and then there's other emotions. Now, if I asked you, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What do most people say?
Good.
Okay, fine, good, happy, like exquisite. Okay, exquisite, right? Ecstatic. But there's a problem with saying okay, fine, right? It's not telling you how you feel. Does that make sense? It's not telling you how you feel. So what I have here is a diagram. You can go online and Google this, like Wheel of Emotions or something, right? I just made it a little bit different, but it's the same concept. And what you get is that each emotion can further be categorized into something else. Sadness can form guilt. It can lead someone to be ashamed, or you can feel like depressed and then feel inferior. So a lot of these emotions out there are more specific. So I want you to do an exercise for yourself every single day. Okay, in the morning or in the evening, or at least possibly more than once a day, ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? And if the answer is, oh, I feel okay, no. How do I really feel? Which of the 5, 6, primary emotions, and then keep going. Where would I pinpoint how I'm feeling right now on this big wheel? Does that make sense? So don't be okay with feeling okay, because feeling okay doesn't mean jack. It just means okay what? Feeling okay. Right? You could be feeling okay when you're sad. You could be feeling okay when you're happy. You could be feeling okay when you're like, sleeping, right? Like it doesn't say anything. So go beyond the okay feeling and find out for yourself, what am I really feeling right now? Which emotion is it? And the second question I want you to ask yourself is, how much of it am I feeling? So you can give yourself like a 0 to 10 scale. So if I have to guess right now I feel a little bit of anxiety. Okay, why? Because I'm presenting. So from 0 to 10, I'd say it's probably like a 3 or a 4. Okay, so it's not too bad. A lot of people, I don't know if you guys know, but stress and anxiety, some of it is necessary for like increased performance. Like if you're talking, public speaking, if you're working on a paper or assignment, if you're in exams, right? During the exam, should you have anxiety? Yeah. Absolutely. If you don't have anxiety, you're not going to do well. So some anxiety is good, but as anxiety keeps going up and up and up, the performance will go down and down and down. So there's a certain point where it peaks at. Okay, so for me, anxiety of a 3 and a 4, it's like at the peak maybe. If it gets higher, then I think it's gonna affect my performance. Does that make sense for people?
Yeah.
Okay, so asking yourself the question, what am I feeling and how much of it? Yes.
Okay, but let's say like on a test you don't have that much anxiety, which makes you more confident, or you're confident that you're gonna succeed this test. So is anxiety basically a good thing? I mean, like if you have
some anxiety is good, absolutely. Some stress is good. Some stress is necessary for the body, right? For performance. So absolutely, some anxiety is good. Excessive, okay, coming back to the concept of orthodox balance, anything in extreme is bad. Anything in extreme, right? Extreme sleeping is bad, extreme eating is bad, extreme exercise is bad. Extreme like ibadat is bad too, right? You should not be like praying all like hours of the day, right? We as Muslims, we're not asked to do that, right? You should. It's not. And it shouldn't be the way like you shouldn't pray at all, like for multiple days. So anything in the extreme is bad. The other thing I'm going to ask you guys to do, which a lot of girls like to do, but guys don't, is journaling. Okay. Why is journaling helping? How does journaling help with anxiety, with depression, with stress?
You get to take out all your emotions on that paper.
Taking out all the emotions on paper. Somebody else had something else. Same, right? So, but why is that important? What's the difference between having emotions and thoughts here versus emotions and thoughts on paper? Yes.
To let your emotions out instead of letting it build up. Because I know most guys, they just let it like all in, and then once there's like a tipping point, they just let it all out.
Yeah.
Okay, so letting your emotions out of your system, yes.
Basically, you can always go back to it.
Oh yeah, it's a good reference for you, right?
Keeping it in your mind, you can always go back to on paper.
That's good. That's actually a very cool concept. You're mashallah, a very smart kid. So, the idea that you shouldn't have a lot of stuff you shouldn't like boggle your mind with all the information, right? Write it down somewhere. Like if you have appointments, write them down. Why do you have to memorize all that stuff? If you have passwords, write them down, right? Like you don't need to remember all this stuff. Don't have the same password for everything, right? But don't keep all the stuff in your mind. But coming back to journaling, when you have a thought in your head, when you have emotions in your head, if there are a lot of emotions coming in, like let's say they're about your family, your friends, or your school, you know what ends up happening? People just don't want to deal with them, right? So what is depression and anxiety? It's like the way to just not deal with them, just keep them there and just not touch them. It's like a giant cloud. So what journaling does, it takes that unclear blob of whatever, and you can then make it more clear on paper, right? So with journaling, you can draw stuff, right? Okay, so I'm feeling anxious. Some of it is because of my exam. Some of this is because my dad said this to me. Some of this is because of X, Y, Z. You see what I mean? Then you have a more clarity on the information, on what's going on with you. So to clarify that, this is why therapy helps, by the way. If you haven't been in therapy, you should try it. It's really nice. Because you go to somebody, and all these issues that you have in your head, you sit and you clarify to somebody. You say, you know what? I want to talk about this. This is what's happening. The therapist is going to tell you, okay, it seems like you're having issues with here. Okay, you're having issues over there. It's kind of like journaling, in some ways. So if you don't want to go to a therapist, if you cannot afford to, or whatever the reason is, I mean, come to Khalil Center. We don't turn anybody away. But let's say you don't want to go, then start journaling. Okay, it's very, very important. Now, journaling can be hard for people. Nobody wants to sit there and write, right? So I'm going to tell you some ways that you can kind of like get started. One thing that I like is having like prompts. You know what writing prompts are, right? So use writing prompts. Right? You can actually get journals online. I have one because I go through this phase too where I don't feel like writing anymore. So then it's like it'll ask you something. If you could change one thing about your neighbor, what would it be? Something completely random. And then you start writing, and it gets you back on track. So you can use prompts. There are structured journals out there. Like if you Google journals, I mean, there's like $1 million like industry out there. People are making journals and people are buying them. Nobody's writing in them. It goes to trash. But there are structured journals you can use. There's like the 5-minute journal. There's the Dua journal, the Muslim planner or something. So get those. So it'll tell you what to write about. Okay. And then there's like unstructured journaling, would be just picking up a composition notebook and just writing. Okay. The other thing, one of the best exercises you can do for yourself is called gratitude journaling. What is gratitude journaling?
Congratulations.
Yes.
Things you're grateful for.
Things that you're grateful for. See, only 2 people that are paying attention in this presentation, mashallah. And they're the youngest one too, I think. Things that you're grateful for. So at the end of the day, ask yourself, what are 3 things that I'm grateful for today? So we'll do this right now. It's the end of the day. I want you to just kind of go back into your day in your mind and then think, half of you are daydreaming anyway. So just kind of find that place. From today, what are some 3 things that I'm grateful for? And if anybody wants to share. Eating what? What did you eat? No, that's good. I like that. But what did you eat, though?
The 3 people that are next. I ate like 3 cups of water.
You ate 3 cups of water. This guy ate 3 cups of water. Okay. That's something I have never learned how to do. But you know what? Honestly, okay, let's think about that for a second, right? Most of you, or if not all of you, are Palestinians. There are people in Gaza who don't have water, correct? Right? There are people in the West Bank and Gaza who don't have water to drink, right? So drinking 3 cups of water is something to be grateful for, isn't it? Alhamdulillah, like we don't have to worry about that. It's so easy. All we have to do is go outside, and there's like huge like whatever cooler there that you can just get water from. You see what I mean? So that's a good example too. What else? Anybody want to share something that they're grateful for?
My family, shelter, and my supportive friends.
Okay, she said family, shelter, and supportive friends. Now, one thing I'm going to say is that when you're doing gratitude journaling, you don't want to use generic. You want to be more specific. So I'm going to say, like, I want you to pick one person from your family from today that you're grateful for. Right? It could be like, oh,
That's
today
not
my father gave me this, so I'm grateful for having my father. You see what I mean? Be a bit more specific.
Okay.
Yes.
Getting new clothes from here.
He's getting new clothes from here, from the bazaar. Okay, he's grateful for the fact that he can actually afford new clothes. Right? There's people, about food and water. I was going to just make one small comment. Do you know how often people die in this world because of hunger? How often, if you have to guess? How many people, ever since I started this presentation, how many people do you think died of hunger?
220.
No.
Millions.
6 people a second.
15 people a day.
So it's about one person every 3 seconds. Yeah, it's like the average. One person every 3 seconds, anywhere in the world will die of hunger. So right, makes you appreciate how much we should be grateful for food. Somebody else had a comment here. Yes. Your sketchbook. She's grateful. What are you drawing on there? Can you share that? Sketching. Oh wow, mashallah. She's really good. Show that to everybody. Everybody say mashallah. Isn't that nice? I cannot even draw a circle or a line.
I can't draw stick figure.
Can't go. My drawings are stick figures, right? I think I'm a good one, but I'm not. I'm horrible at it. Mashallah. So she's grateful for that. Yes. Health? What about health? Specific. Be more specific. From today. Come on.
Waking up.
Being a part of the program.
Okay. But I want to. The reason I'm saying more specific because over time it's going to get boring, right? Every day you're writing like health, family, well-being, food. So be more specific. I'm grateful for the pizza that I ate at Pequod's. You guys ever been to Pequod's here?
No.
It's really good. You get Pequod's Chicago style pizza. Yeah.
To be able to breathe.
To be able to breathe. So yes.
To be alive.
To be alive. Okay. Everything. Okay. See the genius guy here. So listen. So you have to be more specific. I'm grateful for A, B, C that happened to me today. At least 3 things every night. Does that make sense? That alone, I'm telling you, will like control a lot of the stress and anxiety. Because if you're worried about like you're not getting enough likes on your Instagram post, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm so grateful I have at least like water that I can drink while people are dying in this world. It's gonna minimize the stress that you feel about your Instagram likes. Does that make sense? Okay. Goals are also very cool, right? Like if you put down goals on a piece of paper, what am I gonna do tomorrow? I gotta take care of these 10 things tomorrow. And then time comes and you check it off. It feels so good, right? So goal-oriented journaling is also very helpful. Goals should be very specific, not broad. Oh, I have to do a presentation tomorrow. That's a very broad goal. Well, I have to go to Rosemont, do a presentation to Muslim youth that are primarily Palestinians. That's a very specific goal, right? So I can check that off at the end of this presentation. And then emotions. When you're writing journaling, try not to make it more like superficial, right? Oh, well, today I did this and then I did that and I did that. No, I did this. This is how it made me feel. Here's what I was thinking when I was doing this, okay? And then I went through that and then I felt this and then I thought about this. So more specific, okay? And keep that journal private and don't share that with anybody else. And try to use paper and pencil because it's a lot better than typing it in your phone. But if you have to do it in your phone, that's fine too. And there's like a million apps out there you can use for journaling too. All right. So we're going to do an exercise. It's called deep breathing. But I want to tell you why deep breathing is important. Okay, so another neuroanatomy lecture here. Kids going to laugh again at these terms. Our brain can be in one of 2 states at any time. Okay? Wait, exactly. Parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, right? So once it's in parasympathetic, this is where you're resting and digesting. Like this is where you're kind of relaxed, like letting go of everything. When you're in the sympathetic side, this is where you're anxious. They say fight, flight, or fear, or freeze. Right? That's where people are like very charged up. People who have trauma history are always in that state. They're always like something's happening, something's going to happen. Hypervigilance, yes.
Wait, sympathetic is voluntary, parasympathetic is involuntary. Right?
They're both involuntary. They both happen automatically. That's the
somatic and.
So now. If you're anxious, which one are you in? Parasympathetic or sympathetic? Which one do you think? Sympathetic nervous system, right? So your goal should be to lower that anxiety level, cool yourself up. So one exercise is called deep diaphragmatic breathing. If you get a chance, you can go on YouTube and watch a video on how to do it, but we'll do one right now just so that you understand how it works, okay? So when I say deep breathing, I want everybody to take a deep breath. Okay. So just breathing, of course, is helpful, but what's even more beneficial? So here's how we're gonna do it, right? Put one hand on your chest up here, just underneath your neck. Put one on your belly, where your belly button is, and now take a deep breath and wash your hands. Which ones go up?
Both of them.
Okay. So if both of them are going up, or if just the top one is going up, then that's not a relaxing breath. So goal should be to only for this one to go up. So watch me, right? So I'm gonna take a deep breath now. There's two hands. Here's what you guys are doing. Here's what I want you to do.
Wait, what?
See? It takes some practice, but you can get it. So let's see. Come on, everybody. Take a deep breath. Only this hand right here should rise. Come on. Okay.
That's impossible.
It is possible. It is possible. Another thing you can do is if you at home, you can lie down on your back, put like a book on your belly, and try to make it like rise. Try to make it go up. Okay. So, so rule number one is you breathe through your belly. Is something happening back there? Somebody getting too anxious? You have a panic attack?
Kick him out.
Is he too disruptive?
No, it's fine. I'm just trying to calm it
Okay,
down.
that's okay. Okay, so rule number one is you have to breathe through your belly. You're not actually like bringing air to your stomach. What you're doing, and this is what I call deep diaphragmatic breathing, because everybody has over here what's called a diaphragm, and when you breathe in, you're pushing the diaphragm down, and your stomach comes out. That's why it's called deep diaphragmatic breathing. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to breathe through your belly. Rule number two is you're going to hold that in for as long as you can, maybe like 5, 6, 7 seconds. And then the last is when you breathe out, you got to breathe out very, very, very slowly. So if you want to relax yourself, it's not just, okay, that's not going to do the trick. The trick is you breathe in through your belly, you hold it in for as long as you can. Hopefully you're not smokers, because then it's going to be harder for you to hold it in. And then you slowly let it out. Does anybody have any questions about that? I want to make sure everybody knows how to do that. Yes?
If you're panicking,
Sympathetic. So is that a question or okay? Okay. Yes.
So what's the benefit of me like breathing from the stomach instead of like from the chest?
So physiologically, there's a lot of like theories behind it, but one is that there's a nerve in your back. It's called the vagus nerve, and it kind of like constricts and then relaxes it. So that ends up relaxing your body. It's like I think it's called a vasovagal response or something. But there's a physiological reason that has to do with nerves, basically. The other thing is controlling your breath is also calms you down, because when you're anxious, you're like all over the place. But when you slow down, your heart rate slows down, your body slows down. So that's also the other thing, right? By breathing through the belly, you're actually controlling your breath. You're not just breathing passively. If you ever watch little babies sleep, right? Or the 10-year-old kid sleeps. Okay, sorry, this is a bad joke. But if you ever watch babies sleep, they're breathing through their belly. You'll see their bellies go up and down all the time. They're not doing what we're doing as adults. So do some deep diaphragmatic breathing. And again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, like put it in YouTube. You'll find like a dozen videos on how to do this properly. Cool? Mm-hmm. Okay. Next exercise, thought control. Okay, so this is a very hard thing to do. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do, right? I'm going to set a timer for 1 minute on my phone. Okay? Some of you are going to laugh and I know you can't control that. I'm going to set a timer. Your task is very simple. Okay, just 1 minute, 60 seconds. All you have to do is you have to empty your mind of all thoughts. No thoughts, so don't think about anything. Okay? And if you're having difficulty, you can do a little bit of breathing, like a little bit louder, and then you can focus on breathing. But don't think about anything. Don't think about the person next to you. Don't think about what you're going to eat. Don't think about who's liking your Instagram post or not. Okay, so I'm going to start the timer. So everybody, okay, right? You close your eyes if it helps. But we'll do 30 seconds because I'm pretty sure people are going to start laughing. So we're going to make it a little bit shorter. Okay, so for 30 seconds, all you're going to do is not think about anything. The timer starts now. Okay, time. So for the people who actually tried and they were serious, how easy or hard was it?
It was hard.
It was really hard.
It's very hard. And that was only 30 seconds.
Easy.
If you practice and you can do this for like 10 minutes, like you've mastered the art of thought controlling. And here's what I mean by mastering the art of thought controlling, right? Like, let's say you're going through something and someone says something to you, like you're walking down the hallway in your school and someone yells something at you, and you have this negative thought, oh man, like my life sucks. Or, thought controlling would be like immediately you're like, oh, screw this, like I'm just gone. You know, like you don't think about something. You're able to let go of stuff, okay? Because most depression, anxiety happens because of thoughts, yes. That's exactly what meditation is. That's exactly what it is. Meditation is either you don't think about anything or you pick something. Like people usually pick something, like they're just staring at it and they're just focusing on just that. Okay, mindfulness, meditation, these concepts. But that's an exercise you can try on your own. Okay, again, empty my mind of all thoughts. Let's see how far I can go. Okay, I did 30 seconds today. Let's do a minute tomorrow. Let's do 2 minutes tomorrow. You know, keep going like that. Keep pushing yourself. And then your body. Does anybody feel their body getting light? Whenever I do it, I feel like I'm like sinking in the chair. You know? You might get that feeling too. So try that. Any questions on that? Okay. So coming to mindfulness, because we talk about mindfulness, there's a very famous saying that I really like that explains what anxiety and depression is. I don't know who this Lao Tzu guy is, but anyway, if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. And if you're at peace, you're living in the present. Okay, so a lot of depression happens because of things that happened in the past. See what I mean? Like, oh my God, I did that. That happened to me. I can't believe it. Why does this happen to me all the time? My life has always sucked. Things like that. Anxiety is what's happening in the future. Oh my God, I have to do a presentation. I'm supposed to do this. There's a homework due, assignment due. I'm going to go home. My dad's going to ask me about this. That's anxiety. Okay, so coming into the moment is what's important. So here's an exercise that you can do. What's called grounding exercise. And that brings you back into the moment. Okay? So it's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But you understand the concept. Don't worry about the specifics. The concept is that how do we bring ourselves to the moment is through our senses. Engage your senses. Okay? So they say acknowledge 5 things that you can see around you. So if you're deep in your thoughts, just come to the present and say, okay, I want to look at 5 things that I can see around me. I see a projector, I see a laptop, I see a table, I see somebody sleeping back there. 5 things. Okay, then it says 4 things that you can touch around you. Okay, and when I say touch, I mean like you can touch and feel like, okay, well I feel this, you know, I can feel like the texture over here. Okay, so 4 things. Again, you're engaging your sense of touch. 3 things that you can hear around you. Okay, so if you're like really quiet, like I can hear something back here. I think it's the air coming from there. And there's this one kid who's giggling the whole time. I can hear him. Okay, and then 2 things that you can smell around you. I mean, if you focus, you know what's interesting? Sometimes, like people who wear cologne and perfume, hopefully a lot of you do, I'm sure, that you realize that after a while you can't smell it, right?
Yeah.
Why can't you smell it? You get used to it. But if you focus, that is a good exercise. If you focus, you can get back to smelling your own cologne. You just have to kind of like really focus on the smell. It's hard, but it's possible. And then 1 thing that you can taste around you, again, if you haven't taste, you know, like don't go around and licking things. Just, you know, there's something edible that you can taste. Okay. Water tastes good. Okay. So that's the grounding exercise. So what you're doing, instead of being in the past or instead of being in the future, you're bringing yourself to the present. All right, we're almost done. The other concept I want you to take home, how many people know what Alcoholics Anonymous is? It's a group of people who are alcoholics. They meet and it's like a support group. They kind of talk about their problems with each other, give each other support. There's a prayer that they do. It's not from the Bible. I think some guy wrote it. But there's a prayer that they do that I really like. It's called the Serenity Prayer. In fact, I have this right here framed in my room because I really like the wording of this. So here's what the Serenity Prayer is. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Okay? So in any given situation, ask yourself the question, can I change it? Do I have any power to change what's happening here? Okay? For example, if you're stuck in traffic, can you change that? No. You can't. Okay? If the weather is bad, it snows, can you change that? You can't. So is it worth getting depressed or anxious over that? Should you be angry in the traffic, like yelling at people and getting stressed out? No. That's something you need to what? Accept. Then ask the things you can change. right? Like if I'm feeling my throat dry and it's getting really, really bad, it's causing me like, some discomfort. Well, I can drink some water. That's something I could change, right? I was able to modify that. If my grades are bad, right? Let's say if your grades got really bad, you're like a D, and now it's like 2 weeks since the semester ends. We're not going to get an A. That's the part you have to accept, that I'm not getting an A. But you might be able to bring it up to a C, maybe a B. You see, so that's the part you can change. So ask yourself, can I change something? If the answer is yes, then you have to find courage to do it. Accept you have to accept the things that you cannot change. And if you can change something, then you have to find the courage to do it. And most people have difficulty. This is why this ends with, and wisdom to know the difference, because most people get stuck with these things. People are trying to, one of the main things people are trying to do is change the other person. I want to change my parents. My parents are doing this. I want to change my friend. I want to change my spouse. My kids need to change. I mean, your parents say that all the time, right? You need to change. What's the general principle in Quran? There's like a qa'ida kulliyah that's like a very universal principle. Allah says that إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah does not change the condition of people until they do what? They change themselves. You can never change somebody else until that person decides to change themselves. The only thing you can change is your own self. Does that make sense? So do not focus on changing other people. Focus on changing your own selves. So acceptance is necessary sometimes. If you're stuck in a situation where life is horrible and you're like, I don't know what to do, that's the part where you have to accept. So I'm going to end with that. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is again going back to our aqidah about what the world is. Right? This world is temporary. The Rasul ﷺ said, "Dunya sijnul mu'min wa jannatul kafir." This world is meant as a prison, as a jail for the believer. Right? So this world is not meant to be easy. It's not supposed to be all relaxing and amazing and fun. People who are super, super rich, they're depressed. People who are super, super poor, they're depressed. Everybody has depression. I mean, when I say everybody, I mean like every level there's depression, right? So nothing you can do sometimes to change that, because it's the nature of this world. That's what we have to accept. So with that, I'm going to end. There's some, like I have Khalil Center's website on here, khalilcenter.com. If you go on Google and type find a therapist, it'll take you to a website called Psychology Today. Very good website to find a therapist. There's Institute of Muslim Mental Health. There's Family Youth Institute. These are Muslim institutes that also do mental health work. So, and if you have any questions, you can email me, khanfahad@khalilcenter.com or at gmail.com.